What's up, guys? In this video, what I want to do is get you ready for equations and inequalities in Algebra 2. Usually you'll find this content at the beginning of the course. So what we're going to do is go through 4 different questions as well as multiple examples. So therefore, when you start this chapter, you are going to be ready and prepared with the knowledge that you need to know to be successful. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of get started on the first one, which is just going to be solving some basic equations. So remember, when you're solving linear equations, the main idea here is we want to isolate this variable, right? So we want to isolate the variable by using our inverse operations. And the first thing we're going to want to do is understand what's being applied to this variable. So in this case, we're multiplying by 5, and the variable is also being added by 8. So we're going to undo addition by 8 by subtracting an 8 on both sides. That's now going to give us a 5x is going to equal, now this is a negative 27 minus an 8, right? So if you owe me $27 and you subtract or you borrow another $8, you now owe me $35, right? So it's a negative 35. And now I will undo multiplication by 5 by dividing by 5, and I get x is going to equal a negative 7. Now in the next example, again, a lot of students will see fractions. They're like, I don't like fractions. But remember, what's really happening with this fraction? It's just being multiplied by the x, right? So like in the last example, we're going to do the exact same thing. First thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and undo addition and subtraction first. So I'm just going to add the 1 to both sides. So if I have a negative 2/3 x is going to now equal to 4. Now, in this case, we undid multiplying by 5 by dividing by 5, right? And you can do the exact same thing. To undo multiplying by negative 2/3, you could divide by negative 2/3. But hopefully you recognize here that dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. Now, you could do the positive version, but again, I want to solve for x, right? I don't want to solve for negative x. So therefore, I'm going to multiply by negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive. So therefore, I have a negative 3/2, and then this will be times 1. So therefore, x is going to equal, now in this case, like, what do you multiply? So you can see what I did is I put a 1 under the 4. So therefore, I can write the integer as a fraction. So now I can just multiply straight across, right? So 4 times a negative 3 is going to be a negative 12, and 1 times 2 is going to be a 2. And again, just remember, from like, you're going to want to make sure, especially going into your class, that you always simplify your result. So 2 divides into a negative 12. That is going to be a negative 6 times. All right. Now in this example, we're going to have a variable on both sides. So just remember, when you have like a variable on both sides, the first thing you want to do is get the variables to the same side. Okay. So it doesn't really matter what side you do. I typically like to go ahead and solve for the variable on the left-hand side, unless it's going to make it negative. Therefore, sometimes it's a little bit more extra steps. So therefore, it's going to be a 5a plus 8 equals a negative 6. Then I can subtract an 8 here on both sides, and I get a 5a equals a negative 6 minus 8, which is going to be a negative 14. Divide by 5, and now I get a is going to equal, now 5 does not divide into a negative 14, so therefore I'm just going to leave this in fractional form of a negative 14 over 5. One thing to remember too, like, it doesn't matter if this is negative 14 over 5, or if it's a 14 over a negative 5, or if it's a negative 14 over 5. Like, those are all the exact same thing. So I didn't want to be confusing over here. Like, I put the negative up top. You could easily put it down below, but again, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're going to get a negative 6. Just don't put it in the top and the bottom. Then you'd have a positive number, right?